Is Puckerfuel safe? Are you going to have a heart attack if you take it? Are the ingredients just way too much? You see, a friend of mine recently took this pre-workout and looked at the label, and a day later, he texted me, genuinely terrified. They asked, is this dose okay? Everyone's telling me that the ratios are completely off and the ingredients are way too much, and I shouldn't be taking this. That's a real story about the Puckerfuel pre-workout. And I can 100% empathize with people who have this fear of pre-workouts being too strong. Because especially with a pre-workout like Puckerfuel is quite potent. It has actually good dosages. If you look at the average pre-workout on the market, it is going to be underdosed. It is going to be very, very underdosed. So when something that is actually potent, actually has the amount of ingredients in it, comes to the market, people are scared that it might be, unhealthy, it might be unsafe. For that reason, I have created this video. Today, me and you, we will be becoming nutrition scientists and we'll be diving deep into the science to prove that the Puckerfuel is completely safe and the dosages are completely safe. First of all, everything that I quote in this video will come either from the FDA, which is the Food Drug Administration, the EFSA, European Food and Safety Administration, or clinical research from a website called PubMed, which was developed and maintained by the US National Library of Medicine, meaning every source that I quote in this video will be from administrations that are basically telling you what is right, what is wrong. And for transparency reasons, I will state all my sources down in the description if you want to go and check them out and read them for yourself. I want to also state that yes, the Puckerfuel pre-workout formula is potent. The formula completely abides by the rules that are set by the administrations. However, it is still potent. You will feel it a lot when you take it. So with those two rules, let's dive into it. First ingredient, L-Citrulline. In the formula, we have L-Citrulline at 3 grams and at 6 grams. Main function of L-Citrulline, better blood flow. Here we have a report from the Norwegian Scientific Committee for Food and Safety. And within this report, we have a bunch of studies, like for example, this one right here, where patients took 8 grams of L-Citrulline and they found no negative effects such as diarrhea or vomiting were observed. As well as another study, for example, this one right here, where people took 2, 5, 10, and 15 grams of L-Citrulline and none of them suffered nausea or diarrhea or any other side effects. But besides these two studies, the report shows a bunch of other studies which also show that L-Citrulline is completely safe at also lower doses like 1.5 grams, 3 grams. It's just safe. In the end, the Norwegian Scientific Committee for Food and Safety basically concluded that for adults from a daily intake of 1.5 or 2 grams, there is no risk. And that's a complete certainty. But as we see on some of the other studies, the citrulline dosages can go up to 15 grams and it is still safe. 15 grams. Like for example, this study right here, which I was referring to, dose ranging effects of citrulline administration. And they used 2, 5, 10, and 15 grams of citrulline. And they found that short-term citrulline administration is safe and well tolerated, even at high doses. So now that we look at the Puckerfuel pre-workout, 3 grams is completely safe. It's a complete green light. And 6 grams is completely safe. It's a green light as well. Tyrosine. Tyrosine in the formula, we have 2.5 grams and 5 grams. The main function of tyrosine is dopamine release. First up, we have this study right here, an evaluation of potential performance enhancing food components. And this is again an official website by the United States government. In studies with normal males, no significant behavioral effects of tyrosine administered orally at a dose of 100 milligrams per kilogram of body weight were noted. In simple terms, if we take the average person which is about 70 kilograms, and we times it by 100, they found that taking 7 grams of tyrosine had no adverse effects. Another study, L-Tyrosine to alleviate the effects of stress. In this study, they gave subjects 2.5 grams of L-Tyrosine 3 times daily, and they found no adverse effects when given to people with mild essential hypertension. So that's 7.5 grams of L-Tyrosine given daily, and there were no adverse effects. And lastly, we have a statement by the government of Canada, and they state that L-Tyrosine is completely safe at 3.6 grams. So they don't really want to push it a bit more. They don't want to go up to 5 or 6 or 7 grams, but they are saying that 3.6 grams of L-Tyrosine is completely safe. So now that if we look at the Puckerfuel pre-workout formula, 2.5 grams is completely safe. It's a complete green light. If we look at the 5 grams, yes, that's kind of getting to the top range, but there are studies showing that there were no adverse effects at 7 grams. That's 2 grams more than the formula. So for 5 grams, completely safe, green light. Beta alanine, in the formula we have 2.1 grams and 4.2 grams. Main function of beta alanine is to buffer lactic acid. First up, we have a statement from the FDA. They announced that carnosine beta alanine ingredient, which is basically beta alanine, can be taken at a total daily intake level of 6.4 grams daily. And then we have another PubMed study in which people took 6.4 grams daily of beta alanine for 24 weeks, and it did not result in chronic sensory side effects in healthy individuals. Meaning there were no bad side effects, there were no adverse side effects, there was nothing bad if you took 6.4 grams daily of beta alanine. So now, if we look at the Puckerfuel pre-workout formula, 2.1 grams completely safe, 4.2 grams completely safe, stated by the Food Drug Administration. Next ingredient, Betaine Anhydrous, and here we have it at 1 gram and 2 grams in the formula. Main function, enhance endurance and muscle cell resilience to stress. Here we have a study that was approved by the FDA, as you can see right here. So they basically did a study on a disease called homocysteine, and they were testing how much betaine is safe to be intaken. For this study specifically, they concluded that 3 grams, usually taken twice daily in both adults and children, was safe. And sometimes doses went up to 20 grams per day. Another PubMed study, safety of betaine as a novel food pursuant to regulation. And they found no adverse effects noted in human intervention studies with exposure levels of 4 grams daily of betaine for 6 months. 4 grams. So now again, we can go back to the formula. 1 gram, completely safe, green light. 2 grams, completely safe, green light. Next ingredient, taurine. And in the formula, we have taurine at 500 milligrams and 1 gram. Main function, nerve signaling. First up, we have a scientific opinion approved by the European Food and Safety Administration. And they literally state, available human data from the use of taurine in human medicine do not give any indications of safety concerns. Look at the list. Look at this list. This is the studies that found that taurine is safe. In some studies, taurine doses were in the 3 to 6 gram ranges for periods up to 1 year, and they did not produce adverse health effects. And then we have a PubMed study right here, the effects of oral taurine dose and supplementation, within which they used 1 to 6 grams daily, and taurine only produced positive effects. There were no negative side effects, no adverse effects in this study. Very simply, we can look at the Puckerfuel pre-workout formula, 500 milligrams of taurine, completely safe. 1 gram, completely safe, shown by the European Food and Safety Administration in many studies. Theobromine. In the formula, we have 200 milligrams of theobromine and 400 milligrams of theobromine. Main function is longer lasting stimulant. First up, we have a statement from the European Food and Safety Administration. We have this study right here, scientific opinion. Within this article, they used 5.7 milligrams per kilogram of body weight per day for adults. So if we calculate that for the average person, 70 kilograms times 5.7, that is, funny enough, just under 400 milligrams of theobromine. So meaning in this study, they gave adults 400 milligrams of theobromine daily. And the panel concluded that caffeine and theobromine would not be expected to present safety concerns based on their estimated levels of intake. Meaning when adults took 5.7 milligrams per kilogram of body weight daily, which for the average person is 400 milligrams of theobromine, there were no adverse effects. And the European Food Safety Administration, so their opinion is that this is safe. This is safe. And we have a study on theobromine in healthy volunteers right here, within which study people took 250 milligrams of theobromine, 500 milligrams of theobromine, and 1 gram of theobromine. And they concluded that theobromine at normal intake ranges may contribute to positive effects, but at higher intakes, effects become a bit negative. So meaning when they took 1 gram of theobromine, yes, there were some negative effects, such as they had worse moods. They disliked it. There were no adverse effects such as vomiting, nausea, heart attack, nothing like that. It was mostly they had a dislike for the taste, a dislike for the feeling. But when they took theobromine at lower doses, such as doses below 500 milligrams, they saw positive effects and no specific adverse effects or side effects. And fundamentally, this study right here is super in depth. I mean, if you want to read this, it covers basically everything about theobromine. They covered all the effects right here, such as how they felt, if they had a high, if they liked it, if they disliked it, if they wanted it. This covers theobromine in depth. And they say that theobromine is safe at lower dosages. If we look at the formula, 200 milligrams of theobromine, completely safe, green light. 400 milligrams of theobromine, kind of getting at that higher end of theobromine, but still completely safe, green light. Last ingredient on the list, caffeine anhydrous. We have 175 milligrams and 350 milligrams. Main effect of caffeine is it's an adenosine antagonist. First up, a cutthroat opinion coming from the Food and Drug Administration. For most adults, the Food and Drug Administration has cited 400 milligrams a day as an amount not generally associated with negative effects. 400 milligrams a day. However, obviously, if you are more sensitive, then you should lower the dose by a bit. So that's why I suggest people to take half the dosing and then only the full dosing. And then another study, systematic review of potential adverse effects of caffeine consumption in healthy adults. And within the highlights, we can see evidence-supported consumption of 400 milligrams per day in adults, which was not associated with overt adverse effects. Intakes of 300 milligrams per day in pregnant women and a bit less for children and adolescents remain acceptable. And this right here is also a super in-depth study. They cover caffeine super in-depth. If you want to read this, definitely go. But again, what they concluded, 400 milligrams of caffeine was not associated with completely adverse effects. So if we look at the formula, 175 milligrams of caffeine, completely safe. 350 milligrams of caffeine, completely safe. There it is. The entire formula is covered in greens. It is all completely safe. I have stated all my sources. I have stated all the administrations that show that this formula right here is safe. So to finish my rant, Puckerfuel is not dangerous. It is simply potent. You're not buying your average pre-workout that has shit ingredients at shit doses. You're buying something that actually works. If you don't trust me, sources in the description. You can check out the Puckerfuel pre-workout at puckerfuel.com. And thank you for watching. I will see you in the next one.